Welcome to Crunch Time. Today I'm going to be giving my predictions for upcoming NBA games today. Before we get into that, make sure to subscribe and leave a like to make sure you can see future videos that I post. Now let's get into the predictions. So, there have been a lot of interesting games so far, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on them and what I think each team is capable of doing. So I'm going to be giving predictions on which team I think will win and why I think the other team will lose and why I think the winning team will win. So the first game is Raptors Heat. And I feel like the Raptors are going to win this one. We just saw how well they did against the Lakers, and it was amazing. Anunoby, he proved he's a great defender, and look what he did against LeBron James. If he can do that to LeBron James, I think he's capable of guarding Jimmy Butler. And they have such a great inside presence on defense and on offense in the post that it's just so tough for other teams to get a groove on them or just have a nice rhythm. We saw Anthony Davis, he was never really comfortable throughout the game. Bam Adebayo, he also really likes to bring the ball up, as that's a huge part of Miami's game plan. And that's just how their offense works. And they have so much versatility with players like Pascal Siakam, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, players like those. They just can play like up at the 3-point line, and then they're dominant in the paint as well. And let's talk about Pascal Siakam. Who on the Heat can guard him? Jimmy Butler? He's just so good from everywhere on the field. And let's not forget about Kyle Lowry, the heart of the Raptors. Lowry had a great game against the Lakers. Great on defense. He was everywhere. And then on offense, he just dominated. He was efficient from the 3-point line. He was just getting everything he wanted. And I don't think that's going to stop here against the Heat. The Heat are a great team. I'm not going to disagree with that. And I actually think they have a better chance of winning the title than the Raptors. I'm a really big fan of the Heat, but I just think that the momentum the Raptors have coming into this, it just feels like they're going to win. And especially with what's going on with Jimmy Butler. And the team just feels like there's been a few injuries, but they need to get back on track. So I'm going to go Raptors with this one, and I'm going to show you guys the XFactors of, I think, the games and why I think the teams I chose will win. So the next game on the schedule is Pacers versus Wizards. For me, that's an easy game. I'm going to go Pacers. The Pacers had a great game, and especially TJ Warren against the 76ers, who many people think are favorites. I personally think the 76ers are the most overrated team in the Eastern Conference, but that's beside the point. The Pacers had a great game, and I think their guards can do more for them. Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon, that's a really good guard duo. Malcolm Brogdon didn't even play against the Sixers, Malcolm Brogdon, he didn't even play. So just imagine how much more versatility that gives them. That's also probably going to take away from TJ Warren a little, but no one's expecting him to put up 50 again. I think Victor Oladipo is really the biggest X factor here. I just feel like if we can see him return to his old self, that'll just be a really cool thing to see. Now, to talk about the Wizards, Thomas Bryant had a really good game today. I believe they played the Nets. I'm recording this the day before all the games are played. So if an injury or something happens the morning of the games, it's not going to be in this video. But Thomas Bryant had a 30-point double-double. That's really good for him. Troy Brown, he also had a really good game. He nearly had a triple-double. 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists. That's really good for him. They do have a few nice young pieces. Rui Hachimura is also really promising. But right now is just not their time. So I'm going Pacers. They also have something to fight for, unlike the Wizards. They don't really have that much of a chance. So now Nuggets Thunder, which I think is the most interesting game of the day. Similar Raptors Heat, both are very close games. I'm going to go Thunder. And the main reasons are Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, and Will Barton are out. That's a really thin backcourt for the Nuggets. And I know Nikola Jokic is really good, and if he does play point guard, that's good for them. But when you have Torrey Craig and Monte Morris as your point guard and shooting guard, that's not a playoff caliber backcourt, in my opinion. That's one of the worst backcourts there is. And then they have Paul Millsap and Michael Porter Jr. playing. They're alright, but they really need Jamal Murray back. And then Will Barton and Gary Harris are great shooting depth. They just don't have guards behind those three who are really you would want in a starting lineup. Also, the Thunder had a really good outing against the Jazz, where they dominated against them. They won by double digits. I believe it was 15 points plus. And it was a well-rounded game for the whole team. They had like 6 people in double-digit scoring with someone else having 9 points. Really good for them. SGA is coming out. He was great for them to get in that Chris Paul trade. Just imagine if the Clippers were able to keep on to him somehow. But him and Chris Paul, great duo in the backcourt. And then Steven Adams is just a beast in the paint. I just think that's going to be able to dominate against the Jazz, especially. I think Steven Adams can beat Rudy Gobert in that matchup. And I'll take, not Rudy Gobert, Nikola Jokic. Yeah, Steven Adams I feel like is better than Jokic in the paint. Yeah, they played the Jazz last game. I feel like it's going to be an interesting matchup. Jokic I do feel like will play better, but I still don't think it's going to be enough to beat the Thunder. So now let's move on to the next few games, and it's the Grizzlies and Pelicans. I think this is more of an interesting game. Both teams are obviously fighting for the A seed. The Pelicans just trying to get to that play-in tournament. And I'm going to give this one to the Pelicans. The Grizzlies just played a game today, and I feel like they're going to be more tired. They've played 3 games in the last 4. That'll be their 3rd game in the last 4 days, and that has to be tiring. I also feel like the Pelicans, they got embarrassed against the Clippers. They took a look in the mirror and saw, we need to improve at some stuff. I feel like they're going to come out shooting much better, playing better defense, much less sloppy, much more effort, and I think that's overall going to lead them to a win. I also feel like those two teams are very fast-paced, and the Grizzlies are just going to be tired. Like, to play 3 games in 4 days is really exhausting for a team, and especially if your team is very up-tempo, that can really take away from you guys. So now I'm going to move on to the Spurs vs. Sixers. This one is really, the next 2 games for me are really quick. I'm going to go Sixers. Spurs did have a really good game today against the Grizzlies, but I just think the 76ers have too much talent. They eventually have to win. They have to beat teams like the Spurs who don't have LaMarcus Aldridge. And someone like Joel Embiid is just going to destroy the Spurs in my opinion. I do like what the Spurs have going. I do think they should trade Aldridge, but they're going to need a big man to develop there in San Antonio. Now let's move on to the final game of the day, Lakers vs. Jazz. For me, this is going to the Lakers. The Lakers are probably going to bounce back from the game they had against the Raptors, where they really disappointed. I also feel that the Jazz have been shooting very poorly. I think they've been shooting under 30% from the three-point line in both of their last 2 games they played in the bubble, and you can't be winning games shooting that poorly. I'm going to give it to the Lakers. I also feel like the Lakers have been very just unlucky. Marcus Morris and Danny Green, they've just missed a lot of makeable shots, and they're eventually just going to start going in. So, let's move on to the X factors of these games. Now, I'm going to be talking about the biggest X factors for each of these teams that have winning. I'm only going to talk about the teams that have winning, as I don't think it's worth bringing up the X factors for a team I think is going to lose. Because if you lose, how much did you really matter in the end of things? But that's beside the point. Let's talk about Fred VanVleet, who's the first person on this list. I just think he's going to have a really good game. The Heat are a very good defensive team, but Fred VanVleet, he shows up. He's a really good scorer, and I think he's probably better than Kyle Lowry at scoring. And in the playoffs last year, I think he probably was better than Kyle Lowry. I also think that Lowry's going to have so many more responsibilities, like bringing the ball up. Lowry is also a much better defensive player than VanVleet, just with effort, takes way more charges. I think Lowry is like tied first with Harrell, I think, in charges taken. He's really good at that. So I think VanVleet can have a really good shooting night for the Raptors. And now I'm going to move on to Oladipo. I don't think TJ Warren's going to have a repeat 50-point game. Hopefully he doesn't. That was really fun to watch. And seeing like a player like TJ Warren just break out really shows how much, if each player is given an opportunity, how much they really can do for you. But I really think Victor Oladipo is going to take more of a role in this offense. He's going to get more minutes gradually. And depending on if Brogdon comes back, I don't think that makes a difference in the overall game. But Oladipo should be able to have a nice game. Obviously, I think the Wizards are going to have to focus a lot on TJ Warren based on what they saw against the 76ers. Now I'm going to talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as the Thunder are playing the Nuggets. As I talked about earlier, the Nuggets' guard depth is awful. They have 3 of their top guards are out. Gilgeous-Alexander should be able to feast on the Nuggets. If your top 3 guards are out, you're probably going to struggle on offense and on defense too. It's just going to be much tougher as the chemistry is off as well, and it's just the players are not as skilled. Jamal Murray and Gary Harris and Will Barton are not the same as Monte Morris, Torrey Craig, and like PJ Dozier or something like that. Like, that's just not the same. And that's why I think the Thunder will win. CP3 and SG, I think they're going to both have great games against the Nuggets. Now I have Lonzo Ball as the X Factor for the Pelicans. The Grizzlies, this will be their 3rd game in 4 days. For a team that relies a lot on athleticism, speed of the game, a really high-paced team, that really is going to wear down on them. It's really exhausting to play 3 games in 4 days. I feel like they're just going to be worn out, and the Pelicans will be able to take this one. Also, the Pelicans just had an embarrassing game against the Clippers. That was awful. Low effort, low energy. I feel like they're going to bounce back from that awful showing. I have Tobias Harris as the X Factor for the 76ers Spurs game. I just don't know who's really going to be able to defend him as well. Embiid, I think, is going to have a really good game as well, but he wouldn't really be considered an X Factor, because an X Factor is more of someone who's low-key going to do something really good. Like, you're not going to put LeBron James as the X Factor. So, I feel like Tobias Harris, he can have a really good performance for the 76ers, especially considering he had a solid game against the Pacers on Friday, where he put up 30 points. Next, I have Danny Green. I think Danny Green is eventually going to show up. He had an awful showing against the Raptors. He went 0 for 7 against his former team. I don't think that's going to happen against the Jazz. The Jazz are also a real poor 3-point shooting team, so maybe that will put some confidence in Danny Green. Just seeing he made a few more shots than the opponent. I don't know. Hopefully he can get that together, as Danny Green is a big part for this Lakers team. If he's not able to shoot successfully, that causes a lot of issues for them. That leads other shooters, they start to struggle more when Danny Green is off, which I find really interesting. When Danny Green is hitting his shots, I feel like everyone on that team just unknowingly just shoots so much better. So, those are my X Factors for today's games. Comment below who you think is going to win all of these games, and have a great day.